Welcome back to Nerf Game Theory. I am Captain Xavier, and today I'm going to start talking about scenarios. Now, I'm not going to talk about specific scenarios or the nitty-gritty of the rules and all of that. If you're interested in finding new game types for your game, I recommend checking out the link in the description to the Game Mode Repository, which is a fabulous website where someone has written up a whole bunch of different game rules, has them all listed, and also has all sorts of additional advice for how to get your game up and running. In fact, he covers a lot of the stuff that I cover on this website. Very, very useful resource. As the title of the series would suggest, I'm going to be approaching this from a more theoretical standpoint. So I'm going to start by talking about the difference between symmetrical and asymmetrical scenarios and the differences and the various issues that might arise from one or the other. Now, the vast majority of scenarios that you've probably played were probably symmetric scenarios. And when I say symmetric scenario, I mean both teams have the exact same objective. Now, they may be coming at it from different sides of the field and different colors and whatnot, but the objective is the same. It's in a death match, wipe out the opponent. In Titan Ball, score more rocket points. Carpe, collect the most MacGuffins. Capture the flag, plant the flag. All of these the two teams have the exact same objective. There is no difference between what the two teams are trying to achieve, and this makes it much easier to balance. If there's any imbalance in the two sides, it's going to be either the teams or the terrain, which I've covered in previous videos, how to properly, how to work on balancing those. In a symmetric scenario, there is no imbalance built into the scenario itself, and that makes it easier to run and feels fair to the players often. They don't feel like one side is being given an advantage because they aren't, unless it's in, again, terrain or team building, and that can be dealt with. Asymmetric scenarios, on the other hand, the two teams have different objectives, and the reason you might create such a scenario is that variety is the spice of life, and asymmetric scenarios have a lot more variety than symmetric scenarios. Now, the most famous asymmetric scenario that you've probably been aware of, and many of you have probably played in, is humans versus zombies. This is an incredibly varied and asymmetric game type. You've got humans on one side, zombies on the other. They have completely different mechanics, completely different rules, completely different objectives. And that makes it for a very, very interesting game, and it allows every single HVZ to be a little bit different because you can tweak little things within the game itself. Every HVZ I have ever been to has been different. Even HVZs run on the same campus have been completely different from game to game, and that variety is what makes it so interesting. But that variety is also what makes it incredibly difficult to balance, and this is something I think new players to HVZ really need to understand, is how difficult it is to balance a game that is that variable and that asymmetric. If any of the various variables get off and the balance gets shifted, it can completely ruin the game. If the zombies get too much of an advantage too early and wipe out all the humans in mission 2 of a 6-mission game, the game's over. And you either need to do a soft reset or a hard reset or something, or the game might just be over, and, well, that's not nearly as much fun. If the humans have too much of an advantage and the horde never grows, then you end up going into the final stand with 5 zombies and 100 humans, and it was a really boring game because there was never a challenge. And maintaining that balance is incredibly difficult. Part of it is in the scenarios and the way the game is written, and that takes a lot of work before the game, and a lot of it is balancing things on the fly, and that's where players tend to get annoyed when the moderators appear to be going out of their way to get humans tagged in order to get the zombie numbers up, or are giving benefits to the humans to keep the numbers from getting too high. That looks like the mods are meddling and then giving the other team advantages, and they are, because if they don't, the game gets ruined. And that's a very delicate balancing act, and I've seen it done very well, and I've seen it done very poorly, and I've seen what happens when it isn't done. But it's very, very difficult, and that's why asymmetric scenarios tend to not be used quite as often, because they can be very difficult to balance. Other examples that you may have played are things like the siege scenario that I mentioned in the terrain video, where one side is given a very defensible location that they have to defend, and the other side has to attack it. Now, they have different objectives, to a degree. One side, it's still tag all of the other team, kind of, is one way you can do it. The other way is the defenders have to simply defend for a certain amount of time. and they usually have a set number of lives, whereas the attackers have an infinite number of lives, but they have to take out all of the defenders within that time limit. So there are two different objectives, and that can work, but it has to be balanced. How long do the defenders have to hold? How many lives do they have? How long are the attackers' respawns? Is there a difference in loadouts? How good are the defenses? Are the teams equal, or are there fewer defenders than attackers? What's the ratio there? All of those things are variables that need to be taken into account and that can be tweaked to achieve a better balance. Now, in an asymmetric scenario, you're almost never going to get a perfect 50-50 balance where the attackers win half the time and the defenders win half the time. One of them is usually going to have the harder time. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where the attackers were just always wiping out the defenders didn't have a chance, and I've seen ones where the defenders just always annihilated the attackers. The attackers had no chance to take them all out. And in those cases where one side always wins, you probably need to rebalance something. It doesn't need to be, like I said, it doesn't need to be 50-50, but it needs to be enough that the team that has the harder time occasionally wins and so still has hope and so has fun. Because if you have to go play the side that always loses, your motivation can leave, and you just like, oh, whatever, we're always going to lose, what's the point? So you need to make it so that there is that urge, because a lot of people love being the underdog. They love the uphill fight. They like to really have to work for their victory, but they want to know that it is still possible to win. So you balance things. Do you make the defense time less or more? Do you have fewer attackers or more defenders? Do you more lives, fewer lives, longer stun times, different scenario, different loadouts? You tweak it until you find the balance that everyone is enjoying. That's the key. Is you don't need to change the balance if everyone's having fun, even though one side always loses. Don't mess with it if everyone's having fun. Though, maybe you want to tweak it and see, and if they like the new thing, then okay, we'll do this now. Don't be afraid to change things up once in a while. Another potential asymmetric scenario would be something like a Counter-Strike scenario, where one side is trying to plant MacGuffins and the other side has to unplant said MacGuffins. I'm obviously avoiding a very specific word so I don't get demonetized. But again, there's a lot of variables in what does it take to set a MacGuffin? What does it take to unset a MacGuffin? Do the people setting it have a lead time where they get to go out early? How long does that mean? Number of lives, number of length of stun times. Again, loadouts. Again here terrain would be a big difference. But again, you can tweak it to try to achieve a certain balance. And if the two sides are equal sized, then the easy option, of course, you have the easy option of just switching the two sides and running it twice. And that way both sides have the advantage or the disadvantage. If they're ones where one side is much smaller, then you might have to rotate through a number of times until everyone who wants to play both sides has the chance to. So if you're Siege 1, there's only 5 defenders and 20 attackers, you'd need to run it 5 times so that everyone got to be a defender, assuming everyone wanted to be a defender. Now, it's not, again, like I said, it's not necessary to have a perfect balance, and some asymmetric scenarios are designed to be one-sided. HVZ is actually an example when you play it on a really small scale, as opposed to a day-long game or a week-long game. You can have a 15-minute game, and it can either be humans are trying to survive for 15 minutes, and in that case, you might want to balance things so that it is occasionally possible for the humans to make it to the 15 minutes. Somebody reached out to me about a game that was being run at their arena, and they were supposed to last for the 15 minutes, but the humans have never done it because the person running the game always basically makes sure they never do. And they were very frustrated like this, and it was partly they were annoyed because the humans weren't organized enough, but it also sounded like the person running it, if the humans were getting close, would shift the goalposts to make it so the humans never achieved it. And that I don't encourage, because that leads to frustration, like the person who reached out to me, because they think they can win, but they actually can't. It's the Kobayashi Maru problem of you've been put in an unwinnable situation, but you don't know it's unwinnable. Because once you realize it's unwinnable, that is where resentment sets in and frustration sets in of, you said we could win, but you made it so we can't. That can be a problem, especially in a game. I understand why they did it, in Star Trek to teach you that sometimes you lose. But in a game, that's not fun, and we're supposed to be having fun. The alternative to that would be that there is no time limit that the humans are trying to achieve. It's just you play until the humans are wiped out. And the goal is to be, the last human. And the way I ran it because I actually did it that way when I ran HVZ, little short HVZs at Public Wars that I ran, the last 2 humans became the first 2 zombies in the next round. So you didn't always have the 2 best players always surviving to the end. No, they have to start as the zombie next time, and that way, everyone plays zombies and everybody plays humans, and because everyone is eventually going to get wiped out, it doesn't feel like you've lost when you get tagged. You just got to join the zombies, and the zombies always win, so everyone always wins in the end. And the last 2 people get the bragging rights, and everyone else, well, they wiped everyone out. So, again, the important thing is that everyone is having fun. And pay attention to your, ask for feedback from your players, listen to the feedback from your players, tweak a little thing here, tweak a little thing there, and ask. We kind of had that at the war this weekend as we were running a scenario. It wasn't asymmetric, but it was a new weird scenario. And the issue was the stun timers were too short. And so neither side could get enough of advantage to actually advance towards their goal, because the players just, they tag a bunch of players, but before they could actually take advantage of that, they all came back in. So we had to set a longer stun time so that you could actually clean out the enemy and get in and do the objective before they all came back in again. And that was just a matter of, we ran the scenario once, that didn't work out, so we ran the scenario again with a slight tweak. That one worked. Okay, good. Now we know. And that's just what you need to do, is listen to your players. Are you having fun? Is this not working? What is working? Watch this scenario. Are they able to advance towards the goal? No. Is this side always winning? Is that side always winning? What can we tweak here and there? But figure it out. Figure out what works. Try new things. Try interesting things. Don't be afraid to experiment. But do explain that to your players, that we're trying a new scenario. It may not work the first couple of times. Give me feedback. What do you think would help? Don't just say, we're doing this now, and then when it goes badly, don't listen to them. So feedback is very important. Encourage them and set expectations. That's a key part in a lot of games, is if people are playing a scenario that they think they can win when they're not actually supposed to be able to, that can be discouraging. So make sure they understand what the actual objective is and what the conditions are and all of that. And that's kind of what we'll talk about probably next time, is victory conditions. So there you have it. My thoughts on symmetric versus asymmetric. Asymmetric is obviously much more difficult to balance, but so much fun because of the variety. So I hope this helps some of you design awesome new scenarios. Definitely let me know about interesting asymmetric scenarios that you guys have run. And if they're not on the game mode repository, do a write-up and send it to him so he can add it, because I'm always on the lookout for new scenarios. I ran 2 completely new scenarios at this most recent, my birthday Nerf war. And so they were a lot of fun. Both of them, I think, went well. One needed a little tweaking. The other worked out pretty well. So we may try them in the future. I may try something different next time. We will see. I will definitely be submitting them to the game mode repository as soon as I get around to writing them up. And thank you guys for watching.